Ed, she's done it again. She's got another banger.
Will, I know. I'm the one who told you to read it.
That is true, but now I'm going to be the one talking about it.
And you're going to take all the credit.
No, we can take it together.
Readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears.
And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars, Truth and Courage.
Hello and welcome to the Brothers Gwynne today. I'm Will, this is my brother Ed, and we're here to rant and rave about Blood Over Bright Haven. The intro might have spoiled how I feel about this book. Usually we like a little bit of suspense.
Who's going to be ranting, who's going to be raving?
That is true, but usually we do like a bit of suspense.
Yeah.
Did they like it? Did they not? I've kind of ruined that, but hopefully you're still going to watch on and listen to the reasons why you should pick this up from me. And did Ed like it? Who knows? We'll get to that. But Ed, what is Blood Over Bright Haven about?
Blood Over Bright Haven is M.L. Wang's second standalone book.
Mm-hmm.
We all know and love The Sword of Kaigen.
Review.
Reviews up there, I'll have to link it, won't I? And Blood Over Bright Haven is the story of two characters who are based in this one city. Now, one character is fleeing their landscape, the world that they live in outside of the city, and they have to flee across a barren wasteland in order to get to this city. And then there is another character who is a female, and she is, well, she wants to be the first female mage of her society, of their civilization, and she has to undergo a trial, a series of tests in front of lots and lots of professors, and then we find out what happens. I won't tell you, but the majority of the story is about lots of magic, is about people trying to use magic for good, for better, to create some sense of system and order within their city. And then one of the characters starts digging into a little bit deeper, delving a little bit deep,
History
like the
is never
dwarves
what it
in
seems.
Moria, and they are finding out a little bit behind the scenes and the history of the magic as well. And it is a very, very interesting story.
So there we go. That is the premise. I'm going to plonk this up here so I don't throw the book around, which I'm usually told off for. And let's get into
You're growing up. You're maturing.
I know.
It
had to happen at some point.
22-year-old young man.
Thank you.
Has you've learnt from your mistakes.
Thank you, Ed.
Which is good.
I'm going to start with the great. You know, we're character-driven
Alexander,
readers.
Alfred,
not quite.
M.L. Wang.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd say better than the company of the other two, for very different reasons. We're character-driven readers. And this is a character-driven book. Why are you laughing?
I'm just appalled that you've said someone now is better than Alfred the Great.
Well, look, Alexander the Great, Alfred the Great, they're a bit morally ambivalent a lot of the time. You know, we've moved on from them.
But
Alfred does some things as well, but we're not here for a history lesson. Blood Over Bright Haven has incredible characters. It's actually quite a small cast from what is in some ways a very epic story. It's a very intimate core.
Intimate. Yeah.
Exactly. Intimate with an epic outer. And it does progress as the story goes along. Yeah. But the characters are at the heart of it. Siona, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher that pronunciation.
I say Shona.
She is by far the major leading POV. We've got another POV that creeps in a little bit, but she is the main character, and she is very, very flawed. But what is very interesting is that she is a product of the system she's brought up in.
Yeah.
Her flaws really make her stand out as a character, and I think it's a very fine balance to have a character flawed who you don't like in some ways, but still feel invested in their story. But it's struck really well in Blood Over Bright Haven, because you still like her, you're like, yeah, she's got some big flaws, and she shouldn't really have said that, or I don't agree with that, but I'm still rooting for her and the journey that she is on. And then beyond that, I've heard Blood Over Bright Haven labelled as blunt and really hits you hard with kind of the social commentary. But a bit like with trope, I don't see blunt as a dirty word. It depends how it's used. With the society painted in Blood Over Bright Haven, one that is very sexist and very questionable in ways that I won't get too far into because that would be spoilers. I think it has to be blunt, and it's in a way that isn't lecturing you, but it is letting you reach your own conclusions in a way which some of the conclusions are pretty obvious, and some people might say, I didn't need it hit home that hard. That's a personal preference, but I don't think that it's really a lecture, and it's in a way that really furthers the story. There aren't tangents, just like a monologue to the reader, which is associated when a book is called blunt.
Yeah, there are themes of racism, there are themes of identity, immigration as well, that are really prevalent in the story of Blood Over Brighthaven, as well as they are, you know, in the 21st century. And it's really interesting seeing how it's used in a fantasy book. Yeah. I think I will compare it to Babel by R.F. Kuang, which is a book that I think has kind of similar themes and messages, but that book delivers it in a very blunt and heavy-handed way. But I do believe that Blood Over Brighthaven delivers it in a far more succinct and organic way, where there are obviously intentions that M.L. Wang has as she is writing about this society. I don't think you can write about, you know, this kind of book without having kind of intentions behind lots of decisions. But I think she does it in such an organic way that you discover things through these characters' eyes. And, you know, one of these characters, as Will said, is raised in this society, so it's kind of like they're almost brainwashed to their association with the other POV character, which to me is fascinating, and I think it's a really good sign of what fantasy can also be used for. Now listen, I love swords, you know, I'm kind of like Ridley Scott, but that's where the similarities end, right? Because I don't like him, but I love swords. I just love swords so much. But there is not a single sword in this story. It's true. And
there are staffs.
I thought this book was absolutely brilliant. Now there is a very hard magic system. It's kind of like adamantium, isn't it? It's that solid, and I think it blows Brandon Sanderson's heavy magic system out of the ocean.
We are both committing kind of book blasphemy here by saying I think this is a better magic system than anything Brandon Sanderson's done that I've read. Because you'll have passages with him which is a bit like, am I just learning this in an info dump? And it does feel like that.
When did I ask?
Sorry to the thousands of Brandon Sanderson fans we just insulted. Not that thousands will be watching this, hopefully, after that. But Blood Over Brighthaven, I think when there is kind of an intense period of learning about the magic system, it's done in a way that really furthers the plot. And also the character.
It's
the
so
way
interesting,
though. Really mirrors the character development.
Yeah, absolutely. No, to me it's so interesting how the magic system is used, because this character is always learning, always trying to better herself, and trying to use magic for good. But it's really interesting when she starts diving into the history of the magic, where things come from, and how there are a lot of kind of reality checks and shifts as you read through the book. Now, I read the first chapter, it blew me away. I had to call William and just like gush about it, and he was like, for goodness sake, it's 3 a.m, leave me alone. But he has then dived in and absolutely loved it. It's a book that I just couldn't help myself from binging, and every single chapter was used to perfection. Now I do think that M.L. Wang with Sword of Kaigen has a really fantastic understanding of character relationships and the dynamics between both the characters. I could have read about their relationship and their friendship for days. I did read about it for days, but for weeks, for months, you know, I could binge that kind of stuff, because it was really interesting how their relationship changed, sometimes faltered, sometimes, you know, grew with strength, and I really love that in a story, because it felt incredibly realistic.
Yeah. And their influence on the other as well. Yeah. I'd say Sword of Kaigen, its peaks are almost unrivaled in any book I've read before. But there are moments that I think dip a bit, but overall I think it's an extraordinary story.
Yeah.
Blood Over Brighthaven, brilliant again, but I think it's far more consistent. The peaks aren't quite as high, but from page 1 to the very last page, it was just, the bar was set so high, and it maintained it in a way that I didn't think it could. There was not a weak moment at all. And I think maybe Siona doesn't stand out to me as much as Misaki did, but every element of storytelling was utilised so well. And we've been talking about how there's not enough standalones in fantasy. How nice is it to have a standalone which is fantastic at the beginning, fantastic in the middle, and fantastic at the end?
It's completely true. And going back to Shona's character, I think she could have been written in a way that was not interesting. You know, we've all seen it. A teenager who wants to pass a test, and they want to kind of, you know, gain entry into the next layer of, you know, the academic world. We've seen that tons and tons. But she is written so well, with a lot of depth, with a lot of character kind of flaws as well as ceilings as well. And I think that her character was written so brilliantly. I can imagine there are a lot of other writers who would write that character and get it wrong.
I was going to
Massive.
say, a lot of books I've read that have a social commentary to really highlight the flaws of society, they make their main character kind of flawless.
Yeah.
So there's this big juxtaposition. But I think it was far more powerful in this, that Siona has got flaws, which is because of the system she's brought up in.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously she's trying to become the first female mage, and that drive comes at the consequence of those around her. And really, is that the most important thing? Aren't you meant to live, to laugh and to love? I mean, she's just
like
that
one of
bit.
those posters on the wall.
She's
dance like nobody's watching.
not quite that far, but yeah, she's lost sight of what it is to live, but she's got her own purpose. And whilst reading this, I was and also still am obsessed with the film Sinners.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking both Sinners, the film, directed and written by Ryan Coogler, and then Blood Over Bright Haven. They both have very deep undercurrents of kind of social messages that are really powerful and very hard-hitting as well. And I thought, how is it that I became obsessed with both of them? And engagement, I realise, is at the core of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think they understand that to have your reader emotionally invested and to have them receive these messages in a way where they learn from it and it will impact them, they have to be engaged. That doesn't mean enjoyment in terms of laughter and having fun the whole time.
That does help.
But that does help. That's one form of engagement and enjoyment. But then the immersive nature of this story, the standout characters, also the breadcrumb trail of learning the mysteries of this world, the hidden history, and how society may have covered some terrible things, and that journey you go through with the characters makes this so engaging. So it's not just kind of heavy hit and knocking the reader down under quite terrible things that happen in this book. I think there is a balance, and you do also have humour in the character interaction as well. It's got the full scope of the human condition.
I think the last book that I read that captured me this much, where I literally could not stop myself from reading it and binging it to the very end, was The Will of the Many by James Islington. And obviously that book's taken the world over by storm, and this book should probably take over it by tornado.
I would
recommend. But the ending was so strong, was such a twist, and it was so unpredictable.
Yeah.
But it was also really brave. And I always felt like The Sword of Kaigen was a book that was destined to be self-published. And, you know, being self-published is not a bad thing at all. It felt like a book that didn't have kind of any major hand-holding through a publisher of saying, this is commercial. What I think we're seeing with, you know, Sinners, with Blood Over Bright Haven, with Sword of Kaigen, is that you're seeing original stories where things, you know, you might have some familiarities with other books and films, but then you're seeing the story taken in a different direction with big twists and big decisions being made that subvert the story compared to where you think it's going to take you. And I think the ending of Blood Over Bright Haven was incredibly strong.
It really was. And so I think, have you got anything else to add, Ed? Or
I think it's
should we get to our overview
good.
and whether this is a yay or nay?
Yeah.
So Blood Over Bright Haven, in my opinion, is a just really fantastic standalone. It hits every element of storytelling really well. I'd say it might not be for everyone because it is quite heavy at times in terms of content matter, but it's also one that I think you'll understand that within the first 20 pages or so. You'll know if this is a book that's going to click with you or not, because it's a very bold book. And as you said, it's not holding your hand in a lot of ways. And so I think that you'll realise when you're reading it starting, if it doesn't click with you, it might not be a book for you. Of course, everything in reading is subjective, but I think this is one that obviously thousands of people have already loved it, and we are the latest to jump on that bandwagon. So it's a yay from me.
It's a yay from me. It's a very original story. It's very unique. And it's just a riveting story, and it's some of the best that fantasy can offer.
It really is. And so that is Blood Over Bright Haven. Ed, we did quite well to read a book at a similar time to each other.
It's not like us at
It
all.
really isn't. We're upping our game. We really
are influenced by Tutor Ramble, who actually review the books that they read.
I mean, how dare they show us up like that?
I know, they're the second best duo on Bookshelf.
But there we go. That is our review of the Blood Over Bright Haven. And it's a great book. Pick it up. I really recommend it. This is one of the directions fantasy needs to go.
Absolutely. More standalones. Truth and Courage.
The Brothers Gwynne.
The Brothers Gwynne.